Hey guys, tonight we begin with something a little different. Imagine yourself waking up in a world so vibrant, so alive, and so perilous that you probably wouldn't survive past breakfast. The air is thick with the mingling scents of wood smoke and chili, and somewhere far off, drums pound a rhythm that makes your heart race before your feet even hit the mat. You're in Tenochtitlan, the dazzling heart of the Aztec Empire, where market day is about to begin. And let's just say you are hilariously unprepared. The streets beyond your modest hut already hum with life, and you haven't even figured out how to tie your sandals yet. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is, because, let's face it, it's probably safer there. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. Your eyes flicker open, squinting against the early light streaming through the woven reed wall. Outside, the city is already stirring. You hear the cooing of pigeons, the bark of a dog, or at least you hope that's a dog, and the unmistakable clang of a vendor setting up his stall. The scent of chili mingled with maize and something faintly fishy wafts through the air. That's your first test. Breathing without gagging. Congratulations. You've survived the first 10 seconds. You sit up, feeling the cool clay floor beneath you, and glance at your surroundings. Simple, functional, and utterly unfamiliar. The walls are adorned with woven mats. A few clay pots sit in the corner, and your sandals, those infernal thongs you haven't quite mastered, wait beside the door. You fumble with the leather straps, trying to remember how that helpful old woman showed you last night. After several tries, they're on, sort of. Close enough. Historians still argue whether average Aztecs took their footwear quite as seriously as the nobles did. But in your case, barely functional will have to do. You shuffle outside, where the city stretches before you like a living mosaic. Tenochtitlan sits atop the Great Lake, connected to the land by 3 long causeways, and it's already shimmering in the morning haze. You can see the white limestone of temples catching the sun, the endless grid of canals reflecting the sky, and the market square beginning to fill like a hive. Somewhere in the distance, a conch shell is blown, a signal that the market is open. It echoes over the water, a haunting, hollow sound that makes the fine hairs on your arms rise. You glance down at your tunic, a little crumpled from sleep, and realize just how out of place you look. No feathered cloak, no jade ear spools, no fancy sandals. Just you, a stranger in a world where appearances speak volumes. And here's a fun fact to warm your heart. Historians still argue whether foreigners were treated with suspicion or fascination at these markets. Judging by the glances you're already getting, it's going to be a bit of both. As you begin your journey toward the heart of the city, your feet slap softly against the paving stones. The causeways, those great highways of stone and packed earth, are already teeming with people. Traders from the countryside lead strings of turkeys that gobble indignantly. Porters, or tamimés, bend under massive bundles strapped to their backs with forehead slings. Canoes glide alongside you in the canals, loaded with baskets of produce, pottery, and... Did you just see a small jaguar cub? You probably did. And no, you're not hallucinating, yet. The sun is climbing, its heat already pressing down on you, and you wipe a bead of sweat from your brow. The city smells of earth and water and humanity, with a generous helping of roasted maize. A porter barrels past, nearly knocking you into the canal, and you barely manage to sidestep him. You're pretty sure he muttered something under his breath, something that, let's say, doesn't translate politely. And let's not even talk about the geese that hiss as you pass. You glance back, heart pounding, and wonder if you're supposed to hiss back. Spoiler, no, you're not. By the time you reach the first of the great plazas leading to the market, your feet are already sore and you've sweated through your tunic. Around you, the city thrums with life. Artisans hammering copper bells, weavers setting up looms, and the occasional noble carried past in a litter, eyeing you with the bored disdain of someone who's never had to price-check chili peppers. Oh, and speaking of noble glances, historians still argue whether market-goers of different classes mixed freely or kept to their own zones. Judging by the way people are subtly steering clear of you, you suspect you're in the wrong zone. Somewhere nearby, a priest chants as he blesses a trader's goods. You pause, fascinated, until you catch the faint whiff of incense and realize it's masking the more pungent aroma of drying fish. Your stomach rumbles, whether from hunger or nerves you're not sure, and you press on. The market awaits. And so does your first chance to spectacularly embarrass yourself. You trudge forward, the stone beneath your feet warming as the sun creeps higher, and approach one of the massive causeways that will lead you straight into the pulse of Tenochtitlan. The causeway is a marvel, wide enough to fit a dozen people shoulder to shoulder, flanked by the endless shimmer of lake water. But before you can admire the view too long, reality strikes. You're not alone on this morning commute. Far from it. The causeway is already packed. You weave between lines of porters, their backs bent under loads that look designed to flatten an untrained spine. Tamemes, they're called, professional human pack mules, and they stride with the endurance of people who've been doing this since childhood. You, on the other hand? Your shoulders are already sore from carrying that tiny pouch of cacao beans you grabbed to trade. Good luck with that. Historians still argue whether most everyday market-goers carried small trade items themselves or relied on porters. Judging by your aching arm, you're in the everyday fool category today. Every few steps, someone barrels past you. A young man balancing baskets of live fish, sloshing with lake water, narrowly misses, splattering your legs. A woman with a huge clay pot atop her head strides by so gracefully that you nearly applaud, until she throws you a look that clearly says, tourist. A canoe glides alongside the causeway, its paddler expertly steering between stone pillars. You glance over at the glistening water, and for a brief moment, wonder what it would be like to hitch a ride. The paddle dips into the water with a soft splash, and you realize you'd probably just fall in. The air hums with life. There's the slap of sandals on stone, the grunt of porters adjusting their loads, the caw of waterbirds darting low over the lake. And then there's the smell, a heady, confusing mix of earth, wet stone, roasted maize, and something that might be fermenting fish, or might just be you. You try not to think too hard about it. A breeze ripples across the water, carrying with it the distant beat of drums from the city center, mingling with the sharper call of a conch shell announcing the market's opening. As you shuffle forward, you marvel at the engineering of it all. The causeway stretches in a straight line, with little bridges spaced along its length to let canoes pass beneath. You pause at one, watching as a trader poles his canoe through, its cargo piled high with green chilies and squash blossoms. He glances up, gives you a nod, friendly or maybe just amused at your bewildered expression, and disappears under the span. It hits you, just how interconnected this world is. Land, water, and commerce, all flowing together like a living machine. And then the real chaos begins. The nearer you get to the heart of Tenochtitlan, the denser the crowd becomes. A cluster of merchants bickers over who gets right-of-way on the path. A boy races past, chasing a chicken that flaps and squawks indignantly, narrowly avoiding a tumble into the canal. A canoe brushes up against the edge of the causeway, sending a small wave sloshing over your feet. Ah, the refreshing feel of lake water in your sandals. You're really getting the full experience now. You try to keep your bearings, but the sheer scale of the city is overwhelming. The temples loom larger as you approach, their steps crawling with early worshippers and officials. The walls of the great plaza rise ahead, promising a different kind of jungle within. You notice guards stationed at intervals along the causeway, eyes sharp beneath feathered helmets, Macahuitl clubs resting at their sides. You offer a nervous smile as you pass. They don't smile back. Historians still argue whether these guards kept order more for the safety of the people or for the smooth collection of imperial tribute. Either way, you're definitely on your best behavior now. You're jostled again as a group of traders passes, their baskets heavy with dried fish and red-dyed cotton. The porters' forehead straps dig deep into weathered skin, their faces focused, their pace relentless. You feel a wave of admiration and a pang of dread. You still have to get into the market, and you're already exhausted. Somewhere behind you, a vendor hawks what sounds like tamales, his voice rising above the din. Your stomach growls in response, but you don't dare stop. The crush of bodies urges you forward, and stopping here would be like pausing in the middle of a busy highway. Instead, you clutch your little pouch of cacao beans like it's a life preserver and press on. The city's sounds blur into one continuous hum. Shouting traders, squabbling geese, the soft lap of water, the drumming heartbeat of the market. You're nearly there. You can see the edge of the great market square now, a space so vast it feels like a city within a city. The sheer size of it leaves you breathless. This is no weekend farmer's market back home. This is where tens of thousands gather daily, where goods from every corner of the empire and beyond change hands. And you, with your crumpled tunic and sweaty brow, are about to dive right in. A final push through the throng brings you to the plaza's edge. You pause, heart pounding, feet aching, and take it in. Rows upon rows of stalls, each bursting with color, texture, and tantalizing mystery. The air is thick with the smell of roasted corn and fresh herbs, the chatter of haggling voices, the caw of birds caged for sale. You step forward, at last, crossing the invisible threshold between causeway and market square, and immediately feel as though you've plunged into a river's current. The energy hits you like a wave. Voices layered atop voices, colors clashing brilliantly, scents battling for dominance in the warm morning air. The market of Tlatelolco, famed across the lands, unfolds before you, and you're hopelessly, gloriously lost. The space is enormous, easily the size of several football fields laid end to end. Stalls line every path, packed so tightly that navigating between them feels like threading a needle. Banners of woven maguey fiber flap gently overhead, marking sections. Chiles here, pottery there, textiles beyond. It's a city within a city, and you're the dazed visitor who forgot to bring a map. Historians still argue whether these banners were purely functional or held ceremonial meaning. But right now, they're just landmarks you're praying you can follow. The sounds are astonishing. Traders shout their wares with practiced rhythm. Fresh maize, red chiles, fine obsidian blades. You hear the musical jingle of copper bells, the clink of beads, the soft flap of feather fans. Somewhere, a flute trills, adding a dreamy note to the chaos. And through it all, the scent of roasting maize mingles with wood smoke, cacao, drying fish, and something sharp and herbal that makes your nose twitch. Sensory overload doesn't begin to cover it. Your first challenge? Simply walking. The packed earth beneath your feet is dusty. Your sandals slip ever so slightly on the worn surface, and every step risks colliding with a bustling porter, a skittering child, or a basket carried at face level. A woman selling woven mats nearly takes you out with one of her rolled-up wares as she swings it expertly onto her shoulder. You mumble an apology, though you're pretty sure she's already forgotten you exist. You pause at a stall displaying gleaming obsidian knives. The black volcanic glass catches the sunlight, each blade so sharp it looks like it could cut the air itself. The vendor, an older man with deep laugh lines and a feather tucked behind one ear, gives you a nod that could mean welcome or buy something or move along. You resist the urge to reach out and test the edge. You like your fingers attached, thank you. Did you know mainstream historians agree these blades could be sharper than surgical steel, and they were prized not just in warfare but in ritual and daily use? You consider what on earth you'd do with one before wisely moving on. Your eyes catch a glint of brilliant red and yellow, and you find yourself in front of a feather merchant. Headdress plumes, fans, cloaks, the array is dazzling. Quetzal, hummingbird, parrot, all meticulously arranged to draw the eye and empty the purse. A young trader notices your interest and launches into a smooth pitch. His nahuatl is rapid fire, but his grin is universal. He sees easy prey. You shake your head, backing away, before your meager cacao stash turns into a single tail feather. The crowd surges, and you're swept toward the heart of the market. Here, the smells intensify. Roasting chilies make your eyes water. A heap of dried shrimp sends a salty tang through the air. And somewhere, someone is cooking what smells suspiciously like iguana. Your stomach growls in response, though whether from hunger or queasiness is hard to tell. You dodge a pair of squabbling traders arguing over a basket of cacao beans, the primary currency here. Tiny treasures that could buy you a tamale, or, with enough, a cloak. Historians still argue whether cacao value stayed stable across the empire, or if crafty merchants rigged the rates at market. Judging by the sly looks of the traders, you suspect the latter. You clutch your little pouch a bit tighter. No way you're falling for the old, that's yesterday's price trick. Or so you hope. A group of musicians passes, their drums and flutes weaving melody through the clamor. Their faces are painted with bright designs, sunbursts, jaguar spots, spirals. And for a heartbeat, you almost forget your anxiety, lost in the rhythm. The beat thrums in your chest, blending with the heat, the smells, the sea of voices, until it's all one great, pulsing experience. You try to take it all in. Women with baskets of herbs slung over their backs, children darting between stalls, a line of tamims unloading massive sacks of maize. Every direction offers something new, some stall or trader or item you can't quite believe you're seeing. A man squats beside a basket of live frogs, their legs bound loosely with grass. A nearby seller displays tiny clay whistles, shaped like birds. He blows into one, and its shrill call makes you jump. And then, there's the texture of it all. The sun-warmed weave of a mat beneath your feet when you step briefly onto a stall platform. The slick smoothness of a pottery bowl you brush with your fingers. The tickle of a stray feather that floats past your nose, sending you into a sudden, mortifying sneeze. A pair of women glance your way, amused. You wipe your face with your sleeve.
The first thing you learn about Aztec markets, and learn quickly, is that everyone knows the rules. Except you. You step up to a stall lined with cacao beans, thinking, all right, I've got this. The vendor, a wiry man with clever eyes, watches you approach like a cat eyeing an unsuspecting bird. His stall is immaculate. Tidy stacks of cacao, neat bundles of vanilla pods, even a little pyramid of chiles that looks suspiciously decorative. You try to smile confidently. This is your moment, time to barter like a local. You hold up your modest pouch of cacao, hoping it looks impressive. The vendor raises one brow, waiting. You point at a small woven pouch of what you think is amaranth grain. Light, fluffy, seems like a safe bet. He nods, gestures grandly, and pours out a heap that seems generous. Maybe too generous. You glance around, wondering if someone's watching this transaction like it's a comedy show. And here's where it goes wrong. You hand over your cacao, and he scoops it up fast enough to make your head spin. He's already tucked it behind the stall and turned to the next customer before you can blink. Only then do you realize you've just paid about triple the going rate for what might be yesterday's leftover grain. Historians still argue whether foreign visitors were charged steep premiums out of opportunism or simply because they didn't grasp the subtle pricing signals woven into every gesture and phrase. Either way, you just flunked Aztec Economics 101. You sigh, tucking your sad little pouch of grain into your belt, and attempt to blend into the crowd again. As you wander deeper, you spot other bartering rituals in action. A woman expertly negotiating over a bundle of herbs, her tone light but firm, a glint in her eye. A man haggling for a copper axe blade, holding up his cacao beans like he's brandishing coins of pure gold. Deals are made with nods, subtle finger gestures, barely a word exchanged. And here you are, still trying to remember the word for fair price in Nahuatl. The market is a symphony of transactions. The clink of beads, the rustle of cloaks being examined, the murmur of whispered deals. You pass a stall where a trader is weighing dried fish against cacao beans using a simple balance of wood and stone. The smell hits you hard enough to make your eyes water, but you're fascinated nonetheless. Imagine that. Dried fish as valuable currency in some corners of the empire. Mainstream historians agree that regional markets often had their own favored exchange goods, but here in the capital, cacao reigns supreme. Too bad you've already squandered most of yours. And it's not just the prices that trip you up. It's the rhythm of the trade itself. The little pauses that mean, I'm not impressed. The sideways glance that signals, sweeten the deal. The barely there shrug that translates to final offer. You try to mimic it all. But it's like attempting to dance when you don't know the steps. The result is, well, let's say no one's inviting you to join the Merchant Guild anytime soon. You pause at a stall selling clay pots, simple, elegant, some with delicate painted patterns of hummingbirds and maize. You admire one, a small drinking vessel with a graceful curve. The vendor smiles, sensing interest, and rattles off a price in cacao. You do the mental math, or try to, and realize it's beyond your remaining stash. With a polite shake of your head, you move on. But not before the vendor calls after you, offering a smaller cup, then a figurine, then a whistle. Desperate to escape the upsell, you duck into the next row. Historians still argue
whether market traders operated purely independently or whether guild-like groups helped regulate fair practices. Today, it feels like every trader has their own rulebook, and yours is written in invisible ink. You're learning, painfully, that this market is a masterclass in subtlety, and you, my friend, are failing spectacularly. The sun rises higher, and the crowd thickens. The market's pulse quickens. Everywhere deals are struck, hands are clasped, bundles are exchanged. You stand at the center of it all, clutching your sad pouch of overpriced grain, and wonder how long you'll last before you're either broke or bartered into someone's service for the afternoon. You're starting to see why even seasoned visitors brought along a savvy local guide. You drift along the market's winding rows, drawn by the heady scent of crushed herbs and roasting seeds. The spice and herb section is a kaleidoscope of green, gold, and deep red. Piles of fresh coriander, bundles of epazote tied with thin twine, towers of dried chilies so artfully stacked they resemble small pyramids. The air here is thick with the earthy, peppery aroma of spices that tickles your nose and dares you not to sneeze. Spoiler, you fail the dare. Your first sneeze is dainty. The second is less so. By the third, heads are turning, and you're frantically searching for a sleeve before realizing your tunic is already streaked with dust. A woman selling garlic and onion bulbs chuckles softly and offers you a small bundle of fragrant leaves. You accept with gratitude, pressing them to your face in the hope that their strong scent will quiet the tickle in your sinuses. Historians still argue whether these herbal stalls doubled as informal apothecaries or were strictly culinary suppliers. Right now, it feels like both, as if half the city comes here for remedies as much as for recipes. You pause to take it all in. A vendor deftly slices a vanilla pod, releasing a sweet, heady scent that momentarily overpowers the sharper smells around it. Another trader pounds seeds in a stone mortar, the rhythmic thunk-thunk of pestle against bowl, a steady beat beneath the market's hum. The ground beneath your feet is dusted with spilled herbs, creating a soft, fragrant carpet that clings to your sandals. You glance down and notice tiny purple blossoms, some trader's accidental offering to the gods of chaos. And the colors. Oh, the colors. Mounds of dried marigold petals, brilliant yellow and orange, promise not only to flavor stews, but to grace altars. Bunches of sage and rosemary, their leaves dusty and soft, give off an oiliness that lingers on your fingers. Red amaranth grain, so fine it flows like sand, glitters in the sunlight. Mainstream historians agree that herbs and spices weren't just kitchen staples. They played roles in ritual, medicine, even diplomacy. You marvel at the idea of sealing a peace treaty with a gift of chilies and cacao. Imagine trying that in modern times. Here, Prime Minister, accept these jalapenos as a sign of our goodwill. A nearby stall catches your eye. The trader arranges tiny clay bowls filled with powders and seeds. Annatto for color, chia for strength. Tiny seeds you can't name but that promise health, vigor, maybe even love. A customer approaches, and with barely a word, the trader selects a mix of herbs, crushes them together, and ties the bundle with a strip of bark. It's like watching a silent magician at work. You wonder what your own mix would contain, something for courage, perhaps, or maybe a charm against foolish purchases. Historians still argue whether certain herbal combinations were standardized across markets or varied by region and trader's lineage. From the looks of it, each vendor here has their own secret blend, passed down like family treasure. You lean in at one stall to better see the contents of a small basket and find yourself nose to nose with dried scorpions. Lovely. You back away, hands raised in polite surrender, as the vendor grins. You make your way further down, stepping carefully around a pile of spilled seeds. The crowd thins just slightly here, as if even the most dedicated shoppers need a breather from the intensity. A group of young boys sits cross-legged in the shade, grinding herbs into powder, their hands stained green and brown. A few glance up at you with shy curiosity. One offers you a leaf, and you accept it, not wanting to offend, though you're not entirely sure whether it's meant for chewing, brewing, or warding off evil spirits. You tuck it behind your ear. When in Tenochtitlan, you're starting to feel the weight of it all, both literally, from your now fragrant and slightly grubby tunic, and figuratively, from the sheer sensory overload. But before you can retreat, a vendor thrusts a small clay cup toward you, filled with what looks like a dark, gritty liquid. You take a cautious sip. The bitterness of ground cacao mingles with the earthy warmth of chili, and you almost cough it back out, but not quite. It's strange, but not unpleasant, like drinking the essence of the market itself. Somewhere nearby, a parrot squawks loudly, as if to mock your hesitation. You glance around and realize you've been standing still long enough to draw attention again. Time to move on, before someone decides you're part of the scenery.
You're feeling a little braver now. Well, braver or simply resigned, as you let the tide of bodies guide you deeper into the market. And then you see it, the oddities booths, the section where the ordinary rules of trade seem to dissolve into pure wonder, confusion, or both. Here the air seems thicker, as if even the market's usual scents and sounds pause to gawk alongside you. First up, the live frog seller. Yes, live frogs, dozens of them, their legs loosely bound with reeds, their bulging eyes staring at you with what you choose to interpret as sympathy. The vendor, a wiry man with painted cheeks, offers you one with a grin that's equal parts friendly and mischievous. You politely decline, but he isn't offended. He's already hawking his amphibian wares to the next curious passerby. Historians still argue whether these frogs were primarily destined for the cooking pot or whether they had ceremonial or medicinal uses. You, for one, are not sticking around to find out. You shuffle onward and spot a display of jaguar pelts, their rich yellow fur patterned with black rosettes, draped dramatically over wooden frames. The trader, standing guard, wears a cloak of feathers and bone beads, his expression unreadable. The pelts are breathtaking, each one a symbol of power and prestige. Mainstream historians agree that such goods were the domain of nobles and warriors, the sort of thing that, if you're asking the price, you definitely can't afford. You back away slowly, hoping to avoid even breathing on something so valuable. And then there are the powders, small clay bowls filled with substances of every imaginable hue, deep reds, chalky whites, jet blacks, dusty greens. The vendors here speak in hushed tones, offering their wares with cryptic explanations. Love charms, protective powders, mixtures for good dreams or safe journeys. You spot one bowl filled with a grayish dust that glitters faintly in the sun. The trader catches your gaze and murmurs a phrase you don't understand, but his tone is so persuasive you nearly hand over your last cacao beans on instinct. You pause at a booth displaying strange wooden masks, some painted with bright geometric patterns, others left bare, their hollow eyes seeming to follow you as you move. A small child peers out from behind one, giggling as she tries to spook passers-by. You can't help but smile. Finally, someone else as lost in the wonder of it all as you are. Nearby, a merchant demonstrates a small clay whistle shaped like a jaguar's head. He blows into it, and the sound is so eerily like a growling cat that you jump, heart racing. The vendor laughs and repeats the trick, drawing a small crowd of amused onlookers. Historians still argue whether such whistles were toys, ritual tools, or instruments of psychological warfare. Judging by your reaction, all three are plausible. The oddities section seems endless. A man displays bundles of dried insects, their glossy shells catching the light. Another stall offers what looks like twisted roots carved into tiny figures. Charms, perhaps, or
simple curiosities. You marvel at a pile of turtle shells, polished to a soft gleam, and imagine the many uses they might serve. Bowls, instruments, or something stranger still. You can't help but notice the glances you're drawing here. The oddities merchants seem more amused than annoyed by your wide-eyed gawking. Maybe they're used to visitors wandering through, overwhelmed and bewildered. Or maybe they're waiting for you to make that rookie mistake and overpay for a rare powder that's actually just crushed chalk. Either way, you keep your hands firmly at your sides. A breeze stirs the market, lifting the scent of herbs, spices, and, yes, animals. Somewhere, a monkey chatters, its voice sharp and insistent. You spot it a few stalls down, tethered by a thin rope, eyeing a basket of fruit with clear intent. The trader keeping watch sighs, as if this is a battle fought daily, and gently steers the creature away. The monkey bares its teeth in protest, and you decide to give that stall a wide berth. You pause for a moment, letting the swirl of strange sights and sounds wash over you. The oddity section is a place of wonder, yes, but also a reminder. This market is as much about spectacle as it is about trade. And you, my friend, are here for the full show, whether you want it or not.
You tell yourself it's time for a break. Time to do what any sensible person would do after navigating the oddities and narrowly avoiding buying powdered nothing for your last cacao bean. Find food. The air here is thick with temptation, and your stomach growls loud enough to earn a curious glance from a passing porter. If you thought the herb section was fragrant, the food court of Tenochtitlan is on another level entirely. Rows of vendors are tucked beneath canopies of woven reeds, each tending a clay griddle, steaming pot, or small brazier. The smell of roasting maize mingles with the savory tang of stewing beans, the smoky bite of chiles, and the sweet promise of fresh fruit. A vendor flips a tamale wrapped tight in maize leaves, its edges just beginning to crisp against the heat. Your mouth waters involuntarily. You edge closer and attempt the universal gesture of, "How much?" The woman behind the stall sizes you up, sweaty, bewildered, clearly foreign, and rattles off a price in cacao. You fumble with your pouch and hand over what you hope is correct. Either she's kind or too busy to haggle, because she slides the tamale into your hand without complaint. You bite in cautiously, the warm maize dough soft and slightly sweet, the filling spicy enough to make your eyes water, but so delicious you don't even care. Mainstream historians agree that tamales were an Aztec staple, eaten plain or stuffed with everything from beans to fowl to, you guessed it, iguana. And as you reach the center of your tamale, you wonder, is this one of those exotic versions? The texture hints that it might be. You decide ignorance is bliss and take another bite. You perch on a low stone step, taking in the scene around you. Everywhere people are eating. Traders snatching quick bites between deals, children sharing roasted squash seeds, nobles with feathered cloaks sampling cups of frothy cacao. The food court hums with conversation, punctuated by the crackle of roasting chiles and the hiss of steam as vendors ladle hot broth into bowls. You spot one merchant stirring a massive pot of stew, its surface shimmering with oil and floating herbs. A porter pauses long enough to gulp down a bowl before vanishing back into the crowd. Historians still argue whether the market's food section served purely to feed the masses or also functioned as a stage for culinary display, where cooks showed off regional specialties and competed for customers. Watching the flair with which a vendor flips maize cakes,
or the flourish of a fruit seller arranging guavas in a perfect pyramid, you suspect it's both. You wander further, emboldened by food and a moment's rest. A young boy offers you a skewer of roasted insect grubs, crispy, golden, glistening with a drizzle of honey. You politely decline, earning a grin as he pops one into his mouth with obvious delight. You pass a fruit stall, its offerings a rainbow of colors: golden sapotes, bright red prickly pears, deep purple plums. The vendor slices a chunk of pineapple with a curved blade, handing it to a customer with the practiced ease of someone who could do this in their sleep. And then there's the drink. Traders hawk cups of pulque, a milky, fermented agave brew, or thick, bitter cacao mixed with chili and maize. A vendor offers you a taste. You sip, and the earthy, spicy flavor explodes on your tongue. It's not quite like anything you've had before. Rich, gritty, a little alarming, but weirdly satisfying. You hand the cup back, wiping your mouth on your sleeve. Somewhere nearby, a parrot shrieks, as if to announce the market's midday frenzy. The sun is high, the crowd at its thickest, and the food court hums with energy. You glance at the last few cacao beans in your pouch and wonder what other culinary adventures or misadventures they might buy you. Because one thing is certain: if you're going to survive this day, you'll need to eat like a local, or at least fake it convincingly. Feeling slightly revived, though also slightly singed from the chili-laced tamale, you let yourself be pulled along by the current of shoppers. And suddenly, you see them. The feather merchants. Their stalls are nothing short of dazzling, each one an explosion of color so vivid it stops you in your tracks. Plumes of emerald quetzal, fiery red parrot feathers, iridescent blue from hummingbirds, all arranged in fans, cloaks, and headdresses that shimmer in the sunlight like treasures spun from rainbows. You step closer, drawn in by the sheer artistry. One vendor, a tall man draped in a cloak of mottled brown and gold feathers, holds up a magnificent headdress, the long quetzal tail plumes trailing nearly to the ground. The sight of it makes your breath catch. It's not just beautiful, it's power, wealth, status woven into a wearable masterpiece. Mainstream historians agree that featherwork was one of the Aztecs' most prized art forms, with certain feathers reserved for the nobility or for ceremonial use. You, of course, look about as noble as a wet chicken. The trader notices your interest and smiles, a smile that's part welcome, part shark. He gestures for you to come closer, lifting the headdress just so, letting the feathers catch the light. You shake your head, trying to convey "just looking" in the universal language of nervous tourists everywhere. But it's too late. You've engaged. He rattles off a price in cacao so steep you nearly drop your last few beans in shock. Historians still argue whether feather merchants had fixed rates or if they sized up each customer's naivety first. Judging by your experience, it's definitely the latter. Desperate not to offend, you admire a smaller fan, its red and black feathers arranged in a perfect spiral. The trader, sensing your hesitation, offers a counterprice, only slightly less ruinous. You back away, hands raised, babbling a mixture of broken nahuatl and sheepish smiles, until the crowd mercifully sweeps you along. You're fairly certain you've just insulted either his craftsmanship or his grandmother, possibly both. As you move on, you marvel at the sheer variety of feather goods. There are fans delicate enough to stir a butterfly's wing, cloaks heavy with layered plumes, shields with designs so intricate they look painted rather than assembled. You spot a young boy watching his father arrange a display of blue and green feathers, his small hands mimicking the movements, learning the trade. A woman passes by, adjusting the feathered fringe of her cloak with casual elegance, as if to remind you that here, fine featherwork is as much a language as it is a luxury. The section is a feast for the senses. Feathers rustle softly as the breeze stirs them. The colors shift as the light changes, like watching a living mosaic ripple and shimmer. The air smells faintly of the natural oils used to preserve and protect the plumes. You pause at the edge of the stalls, watching as a nobleman's servant carefully inspects a headdress, fingers lingering on the longest plumes, checking for flaws invisible to your untrained eye. The transaction is quiet, measured, nothing like the chaos of the barterers elsewhere. Here, every word and gesture carries weight. This is art, status, and economy intertwined. And you, with your last few cacao beans clutched in a sweaty palm, are woefully out of your depth. You turn away at last, the vivid colors lingering in your mind's eye. A reminder of just how far from home you really are. You're starting to think you might finally be blending in. That is, until a sharp commotion snaps you out of your daze. Ahead, near the center of the square, a small crowd is gathered, voices raised in heated debate. You edge closer, curiosity outweighing your instinct for self-preservation, and find the source. A thief has been caught. And here's where things get interesting. The accused, a wiry young man no older than 20, stands with his head bowed, flanked by 2 market guards. Their wooden clubs rest lightly on their shoulders, but their stares could carve stone. The thief's prize? A bundle of chiles, clutched so tightly in his hand that the stems have bent and the leaves have torn. The chiles look as miserable as their captor. The crowd watches, murmuring. Some look angry, others amused, a few sympathetic. One old woman shakes her head, muttering something you can't quite catch. Mainstream historians agree that Aztec markets were tightly regulated spaces, where order was enforced not just by guards, but by a shared sense of community obligation. Theft wasn't just a crime against property. It was an insult to the entire market's integrity. And justice? Swift and public. One of the guards raises his voice, announcing the charge, while the other gestures toward a low platform nearby. The thief is led up onto it, his face pale, his legs shaking slightly. The punishment begins, not violence, but humiliation. He's made to declare his crime aloud, hands held high, as the crowd jeers and laughs. A vendor tosses a wilted sprig of epazote at his feet. Another shakes a finger in mock scolding. You stand frozen, a knot in your stomach. You feel embarrassed for the boy, but also relieved. Relieved that it's not you up there, being reminded in no uncertain terms of the price of dishonesty. Historians still argue whether such public shaming had long-term consequences, or if, once endured, the slate was wiped clean. The boy's downcast eyes suggest he feels every ounce of the weight today. The guards eventually wave him down, satisfied, and he slinks off into the crowd, his stolen chiles confiscated, his dignity tattered. The platform stands empty once more, a silent threat to anyone considering similar mischief. The market's rhythm resumes, as if the whole spectacle were no more than a brief interlude in its daily performance. You glance at your own meager pouch of goods and feel a renewed determination to keep your head down and your hands visible. No accidental offenses today, thank you very much. As you drift away from the scene, you notice the subtle ways law and order shape the market's flow. Guards patrol at regular intervals, their feathered helmets bobbing above the crowd. Disputes are settled with a word or gesture before they can flare. There's a harmony here. A vendor near you catches your eye, and with a grin, holds up a clay figurine of a guard, exaggerated features painted in bright colors. A joke, perhaps, or a charm against trouble. You chuckle and shake your head, moving on before temptation strikes. After what you just witnessed, The last thing you want is to accidentally offend the real guards with a caricature of their profession. And so you keep walking, a little wiser, a little warier, blending back into the throng as the market carries on, vibrant, teeming, and just a touch more dangerous than you'd imagined. Your feet ache, your tunic clings to your back with sweat, but curiosity keeps you moving deeper into the heart of the market. And here, you find yourself among the tribute stalls, a world within the market where trade meets politics and commerce meets conquest. The air feels different somehow, heavier with significance. You realize you're standing in a place where goods aren't just bought or bartered, they're owed. Towering heaps of maize rise like miniature pyramids, their golden kernels glinting in the sunlight. Bundles of cotton, stacks of dried fish, jars of honey, and piles of precious cacao beans are arranged with military precision, as if the emperor himself might walk by at any moment for inspection. Mainstream historians agree that these tribute stalls represented the wealth extracted from conquered regions, a constant reminder of imperial power woven into the everyday bustle of trade. You pause near one of the maize piles, marveling at the sheer scale. The cobs are arranged so meticulously that it seems a single touch might topple the whole structure. A pair of tribute collectors stand watch, their cloaks trimmed with fine embroidery, their faces set in expressions of careful detachment. They take notes on small bark paper sheets, heads bent together, murmuring in low voices as traders present their goods. You consider approaching, just to look closer, but the sharp glance from one of the collectors convinces you otherwise. This is not the place for casual browsing. Historians still argue whether these tribute displays served mainly as logistical hubs or as deliberate propaganda, meant to awe market-goers with the empire's reach. Whatever the truth, you feel it working on you now. The sheer abundance speaks volumes. You glance at your sad little pouch of cacao beans and feel smaller than ever. Nearby, a trader arrives with a load of baskets filled with chilies and squash. His porters unload them quickly, stacking them beside the growing tribute piles. The collector inspects the goods, offers a nod, and waves the trader off. It's efficient, almost ritualistic, as if the act of tribute itself is a performance everyone knows by heart. You wander farther, spotting a stall where piles of cotton cloth, white, red, blue, and patterned, are folded in perfect squares. Another where jars of salt are stacked like precious treasure. And everywhere the quiet hum of tribute being measured, noted, stored. It's commerce on a scale you hadn't imagined, a reminder that here in Tenochtitlan, trade and empire are two sides of the same obsidian blade. The smell of maize is thick here, warm, sweet, earthy. You inhale deeply, the scent grounding you in this moment, in this place. You notice small children weaving between the stalls, carrying messages or helping stack goods. And then, as if to break the spell, a group of musicians begins to play at the edge of the tribute zone. Drums beat a steady rhythm, flutes add a lilting melody, and for a moment the tension lifts. Traders pause, tapping their feet or swaying slightly to the music. Even one of the tribute collectors allows the faintest hint of a smile. You take it all in. The maize pyramids, the stacks of cotton, the quiet efficiency of empire at work, and realize you've stumbled into one of the market's most awe-inspiring corners, and also one of its most intimidating. You decide, wisely, to move along before your wide-eyed gawking earns you any more sharp glances from those who keep this delicate machine running. You drift from the tribute stalls, your head still spinning from the sheer scale of it all, and suddenly find yourself at the edge of something far older, far more imposing. The great Templo Mayor looms nearby, its twin shrines casting long shadows over the eastern side of the market. The temple seems to hum with a silent authority, its stone steps worn smooth by generations of feet, its summit just visible above the teeming stalls. And with that shadow comes a scent you hadn't noticed before, something metallic, sharp, faint but unmistakable. The scent of sacrifice. You freeze for a moment, eyes drawn to the temple's peak, where the twin shrines to Tlaloc and Huitzilopochtli rise like sentinels. Mainstream historians agree the Templo Mayor dominated the sacred and civic heart of Tenochtitlan, its presence a constant reminder of the gods' watchful gaze. And here you are, standing in that shadow, feeling very, very mortal. Around you, the market continues as if the temple weren't there. Traders haggling over salt and squash, porters unloading maize, children chasing each other between the stalls. But you notice subtle gestures. A vendor glancing toward the temple as he begins his day's trade, a trader murmuring a quick prayer under his breath before accepting an offer. The sacred and the everyday woven together so tightly that you wonder how anyone separates them. You wander closer, drawn by curiosity and perhaps a touch of dread. At the temple's base, priests move among the crowds, their cloaks dyed in deep reds and blacks, their faces painted in patterns that speak of rank, duty, or both. One pauses to bless a trader's goods, sprinkling them with a handful of flower petals. Another speaks quietly to a group of young boys carrying bundles of firewood. An offering, perhaps, or fuel for the great fires that burn on the temple's altars. Historians still argue whether the smell that drifts down from the Templo Mayor on market days came from fresh offerings or simply the mingled incense and flowers that constantly adorned the sacred space. You, standing here now, suspect it's both. That metallic tang doesn't lie, and the faint whiff of copal resin only sharpens its edge. A sudden drumbeat echoes from above, deep and resonant, rolling over the market like thunder. The chatter quiets for a moment, heads tilt toward the temple, and even the busiest traders pause mid-bargain. The drumbeat fades. The market's hum resumes, but the reminder lingers. The gods are near, and their business never quite stops. You edge away, heart beating just a little faster, and glance at the goods nearest the temple's shadow. Traders here seem to specialize in offerings. You're tempted to buy something, if only to feel a little safer under that watchful gaze. But you hesitate, unsure whether it would be respectful or ridiculous. Instead, you murmur a quiet thanks to whatever force might be listening and move on, feeling the temple's presence like a weight between your shoulder blades. And as you do, you realize you came here to see a market, but you're also seeing an empire's soul laid bare in every trade, every offering, every glance toward the gods. It's humbling, overwhelming, and just a bit terrifying. You leave the temple's shadow behind, hoping for a stretch of the market where you can finally catch your breath. But instead, you stumble straight into one of its busiest, most chaotic zones. Here is where the porters, peddlers, and pickpockets work their magic. And you, dear friend, are precisely the kind of easy target they dream of. The press of bodies thickens again, as Tamims weave through with massive loads strapped to their backs, their faces set in grim concentration. You marvel at their endurance. Bundles of firewood, sacks of cacao, clay jars filled with water or pulque, all balanced with the help of broad forehead straps. Mainstream historians agree these porters were the backbone of the empire's market economy, carrying what no canoe or cart could manage in the dense, canal-laced city. You try to step aside to let one pass, but the moment you do, another brushes by, then another. It's like being caught in a school of fish, only the fish are sweating, grunting, and loaded down like pack animals. Among them dart the peddlers, sharp-eyed, quick-tongued, hands flashing as they offer tiny goods, clay beads, bird whistles, charms carved from bone or shell. A boy no older than 10 tries to press a feather fan into your hand, chattering in rapid Nahuatl. When you shake your head, he shrugs and vanishes into the crowd like smoke. A woman pushes past, balancing a tray of small cakes on her head, calling out their virtues in a sing-song voice. You almost consider buying one, but a sharp nudge from behind sends you stumbling forward, and the moment's gone. And then there's the darker side, the pickpockets. You feel it first as a tug at your belt. So light, you wonder if you imagined it. But no, when you glance down, your precious pouch of cacao is askew, and a small figure is already slipping away into the throng. You lunge instinctively, catching only empty air. The thief glances back once, offering a grin that's equal parts apology and triumph, before vanishing into the sea of bodies. Your heart pounds. You check your other belongings, what little you have left, and hug them close. Historians still argue whether market authorities truly cracked down on petty theft or turned a blind eye, figuring the occasional loss was the price of doing business in such a vast, unpoliceable space. All you know is, no guards come running at your shout. The market simply closes over the incident like water over a stone. Determined to salvage your pride, you try to move with purpose, to look like someone who belongs. You copy the trader's Everywhere you turn, there's motion, noise, color. A group of women bargains loudly over a pile of squash. A man hurries past carrying a live turkey upside down, the bird flapping indignantly. A parrot escapes its perch, adding its shrieks to the market's din as a trader curses and gives chase. And through it all, you try to keep moving, to keep your wits about you, to keep what few belongings you have left. By the time you break free of the densest crowd, your tunic is rumpled, your hair damp with sweat, and your nerves thoroughly frayed. But you've learned something important. In this part of the market, survival means blending in, watching your back, and above all, never, ever letting your guard down. You emerge from the tangle of porters and peddlers, hopeful for a quieter stretch, and instead find yourself face to face with the market's animal zone. A lively, noisy, and, frankly, chaotic corner where creatures of every size and temperament are for sale. It's a veritable zoo packed into a few cramped rows of stalls. And before you can even take a breath, you're in the thick of it. First come the turkeys, big, broad, and looking far less festive than the roasted versions you might know. These birds are alive, flapping and gobbling in protest as traders display their glossy plumage and sturdy frames. One particularly feisty specimen makes direct eye contact and lets out a gobble so loud you nearly drop your remaining goods. Mainstream historians agree that turkeys were highly prized in Aztec markets, valued for both their meat and their feathers. You, meanwhile, are starting to suspect they were also valued for their ability to terrify clueless visitors. Next, you pass cages of parrots. Their feathers a riot of color, their voices a riot of sound. The squawks, whistles, and garbled attempts at human speech layer over the market's hum like a chorus of mischievous spirits. A trader offers one to you with a theatrical bow. You shake your head so quickly you nearly give yourself whiplash. Imagine trying to get that home safely. Then come the monkeys. Small, wiry, and entirely unimpressed by their captivity, they eye you with expressions that are far too knowing. One reaches through the bars of its cage, swiping at a passerby's sash and nearly succeeding in tugging it loose. The praetor smacks the bars with a stick, scolding in rapid Nahuatl, and the monkey responds with a chatter that sounds suspiciously like mockery. Historians still argue whether monkeys in the market were destined as pets, performers, or exotic offerings for the nobility. Judging by their attitudes, they probably had their own ideas about it. And the smells. Oh, the smells. A potent blend of feathers, fur, straw, and something distinctly less pleasant that you try very hard not to identify. You step carefully, conscious of where you place your sandals. A goat bleats somewhere nearby. A cluster of small, wiry dogs tied to a post bark in unison, as if objecting to your presence. A vendor lifts a basket lid to reveal a writhing tangle of snakes. You take an involuntary step back, heart pounding. The trader laughs, holding one up for you to admire, its scales glinting like polished jade. You wave him off, deciding you've had quite enough of the animal section for one day. You try to escape down a side aisle, only to be blocked by a trader displaying a pen of young deer, their delicate heads crowned with soft velvet antlers. The contrast to the noisy chaos around them is almost surreal. Historians still argue whether these animal stalls were strictly commercial or if they doubled as spectacles meant to awe visitors with the empire's reach and wealth. For you, there's no question. You are definitely awed, and also fairly certain you'll be hearing phantom squawks in your sleep tonight. At last, you find a narrow path that winds out of the animal zone. Your shoulders relax the moment you step clear of the noise and scent, though the memory of it lingers. The market, you're learning, offers no true refuge. Every corner has its own energy, its own challenges. And the day is far from over. You tell yourself you'll just take a final loop, just one more circuit of the market before calling it a day. But as the sun begins its slow descent and the shadows stretch long across the square, the energy around you shifts. What was once a steady, bustling rhythm transforms into something faster, sharper, twilight trade frenzy. The market, already immense, somehow feels even fuller. People press closer, voices rise louder, deals are struck faster. Traders, eager to unload their goods before dark, shout their best offers, their voices overlapping in a dizzying chorus. Mainstream historians agree that Aztec markets surged in activity toward day's end as merchants raced to sell off perishables and bargain hunters flooded in for last-minute deals. You, of course, are swept right into the middle of it. A woman with a basket of squash blossoms pushes past, calling out prices that sound suspiciously low compared to what you heard earlier. A young boy hawks roasted maize cakes, darting between legs, his hands full of steaming parcels. You pause to admire a stack of clay bowls, only to have the trader launch into a rapid-fire pitch, slashing his price not once but twice before you can even shake your head. It's like a verbal tug-of-war, and you're the rope. The scents are richer now, mingled and intensified by the day's heat and the crush of bodies. Roasting chilies, sweet fruit, wood smoke, sweat and dust create an olfactory tapestry so dense it feels like you're breathing the market itself. Somewhere nearby, a flute plays a quick, bright tune, as if trying to match the frenetic pace. And oh, the bargains. Everywhere, traders beckon. 2 for 1! Half price! Last of the day! You feel the temptation keenly, even with your dwindling stash of cacao. A vendor offers a small carved figurine at what sounds like a steal. You nearly agree, before remembering your earlier mishaps. Historians still argue whether twilight prices truly dropped or if clever merchants simply changed tactics to move stubborn stock. Tonight, it feels like both. The crowd jostles you from all sides. A porter barrels past, his bundle nearly knocking you over. A woman steps on your sandal, mutters an apology, and is gone before you can respond. Your head spins from the noise, the motion, the urgency. You cling to what little you have left, determined not to fall for any last-minute scams. And yet, the market's energy is infectious. You find yourself caught up in it, eyes darting from stall to stall, ears tuned to every shouted offer. The twilight paints the scene in gold and rose, turning the dust into a glowing haze, the feathers and fabrics into molten color. For a heartbeat, you forget your fatigue, your empty pouch, your sore feet. You're part of the frenzy, swept along in this final surge of commerce. The sun dips lower, and the urgency peaks. Deals are struck with quick hand claps, bundles exchanged in a flash. A parrot shrieks one last comment from its perch, as if to mark the moment. You take a deep breath, savoring the richness of it all, the colors, the sounds, the sheer wild life of the market at its most alive. And then, as the sun kisses the horizon, the energy begins to ebb. Traders pack away their unsold goods. Porters load up the final bundles. The crowd begins its slow retreat toward the causeways. The market's pulse slows, the day's fever breaking at last. You stand at the edge of it all, heart still racing, and realize you've survived another piece of this unforgettable, overwhelming day. Barely. Night falls swiftly in Tenochtitlan, the last slivers of sun swallowed by the horizon, leaving behind a wash of deep indigo sky and the first blink of stars over the lake. The market, so loud and alive just moments ago, begins to empty, the frenetic pace giving way to the soft murmur of traders packing up, porters hoisting final loads, and weary shoppers making their way home. You stand at the edge of the great square, breathless, your tunic clinging to you, your pouch nearly empty, your mind swimming with all you've seen, and somehow, you're still in one piece. You trudge toward the nearest causeway, feet dragging through dust stirred by 1,000 departing sandals. The market looks different now, transformed by the night. Stalls that dazzled in the sunlight are now pale shapes in the dimness, their bright goods bundled away, their banners furled. The air smells cooler, gentler, a mix of lingering wood smoke, crushed herbs beneath your feet, and the faint, clean scent of water from the lake. Mainstream historians agree that as evening fell, the market became a place not of trade but of reflection, a space where the city caught its breath before the next day's frenzy. You're grateful for it. The causeway ahead teems with a steady stream of people heading home. Canoes glide alongside, their paddlers silent, their lanterns flickering like fireflies on the water. You fall into step with the crowd, too tired to care that you're being jostled, too relieved to be leaving the chaos behind. The lake breeze cools your skin, carrying with it the soft sounds of the city settling for the night. Distant drums, a baby's cry, the low chant of a priest at some unseen altar. Historians still argue whether nighttime in Tenochtitlan was peaceful or tense, a time of rest or a time of watchfulness. Tonight, for you, it feels like peace. Every muscle in your body aches, your head hums with the day's sights and sounds. But as you walk, the tension begins to ease, your breaths grow slower, deeper. You glance once over your shoulder, back at the dark shape of the market. Even in the gloom, you can sense its scale, its power, its heartbeat. You've braved its crowds, its noise, its wonders and perils. You didn't buy a feather fan, you lost most of your cacao, you nearly got flattened by a porter and out-haggled by every trader, but you made it. Somehow, you made it. Your lodging waits on the far side of the causeway, a welcome promise of rest. The thought of cool water, soft mats, and blessed quiet is almost enough to make your knees buckle in relief. The market fades behind you, its sounds swallowed. And now, as you finally step inside your lodging, the weight of the day drifts from your shoulders like a heavy cloak. The city beyond your door quiets, the last echoes of market bustle fading into the soft hush of night. You settle onto your mat, the cool clay beneath you a welcome relief after so many hours on your feet. The lake breeze slips through the reed walls, carrying with it the faintest scent of water lilies and the soothing lap of waves against stone. The world slows. The night deepens. Each breath comes easier now, the air cooler, gentler, filling your lungs and easing the tightness from your chest. The memories of the day, the colors, the noise, the countless faces, blur at the edges, softening like the glow of distant lanterns across the water. Even the sharp moments, the near misses, the shocks and stumbles, feel far away now, as though they happened to someone else entirely. You close your eyes, and the market fades, replaced by the quiet rhythm of night, the whisper of the wind, the faint hum of insects, the distant call of a night bird over the lake. Sleep begins to wrap around you, warm and soft, like a well-worn cloak. You've made it through this day, through the heart of an empire, and now it's time to rest. Let the city dream its ancient dreams as you drift away into your own, safe and still at last. Good night, sweet dreams.